Okay, welcome back to part 3 of week 5's MN204 lecture. So what we were talking about was big data. We talked about the 4 V's, the volume, value, veracity, variety of data. And we're just going to finish up that topic by talking about creating how we leverage the big data. So things we can use for, we can create transparency in an organization. So one of the first instances of big data was the Lions Tea Company back in the 50s that had a computer, big huge computer the size of several fridges stuck together for inventory control. So they were actually a baking company. The problem with baking is if you produce something and you don't sell it, you have to throw it out. So they were actually able to use data analysis to identify how much product they were actually going to need in any one day and save a huge amount of money in wastage. So we're going to use big data for experimentation, so we get fast feedback on changes. So if you're Facebook, you can actually change the app that, a section of your people are using and get huge amounts of feedback instantly. We can segment our population into different targets, so we could actually use geographical segmentation and offer a different price to different people in different regions. So, in the medical field, we can have algorithmic decision making, where we can actually help people make decisions with algorithms based on information that's available. So we have new business models like that real-time location data pricing. So if we are a baker and we realize that we're not selling a certain amount of product around the place, we could do a quick special offer, change our price to shift some produce before it goes off. And we can analyze far more data. So we eliminate the problems with random sampling. Okay, so then we're going to move on to, our next topic, which is looking at the database approach and database management systems. So the whole idea is with database management, we're going to provide users with access to data. Now, we're actually going to control that access because we don't want everybody necessarily to have all information. You wouldn't want somebody to know how much the CEO was earning, or you don't want people being able to access people's private medical records or whatever. So this, what we have to do is we have to have an approach that allows the right people to access the right data. So database management system will help minimize issues with data redundancy. So we don't want to have the same data stored in many places. One of the problems with that is if it does and it gets updated in one place, it doesn't necessarily get updated somewhere else. It's very frustrating for people if they deal with an organization and they don't have the up-to-date data. So, we want to eliminate data isolation. So this idea is that some people can't access data that's available for other places. We're worried about data inconsistency. There's this problem where we have different parts of the organization have different copies of the data that don't agree. And what database management systems allow us to maximize the following issues. Security. So it keeps our organization's information safe from theft and modification or destruction. So we don't want somebody to be able to hack in and change our data. And we can put checks on the data to make sure it's correct. So, we can't have negative student marks, and that's tempting sometimes. We can't have people, with a minus age. So what we want to do is we want to separate the applications and data from each other, but meaning that multiple applications can access the same data. So if we think of, in a university, we could have something like the database management system. We have the registrar's office, the accounting department, the athletics department, all have different sorts of stuff. But in that, we have a whole series of information through the database management system. So the different offices are able to access the information that they need to do their jobs. So if we have a student, we have name, ID, what their degree program is, what their grades are, what their graduation date. Obviously, this isn't real student data, but we have that information that lets us know what's going on. So how do we access it? Generally, we store it in data warehouses. So the funny thing is, when you look at the data warehouse, you get back to something like the old computers look like. They're huge. So we've got all this information that's stored in one place that different people can access. So what a data warehouse is this repository of historical data that's organized by subject, allowing us to support decision makers. So, there's a customer dimension, a product dimension, a time dimension. So we organize it around the business dimensions or subjects. But they're multi-dimensional databases. They've got historical data, so we want to keep, a record of every single thing that's happened, every transaction, whatever, not just the latest version. And this allows us to do this online analytical processing. And it's also non-volatile. So that we don't actually change. Once we store the data, we want to keep it, and we want to keep it safe. So what a data mart is kind of a scaled down yellow pack version of a data warehouse for the end user needs in the strategic business unit. So the data mart, we don't need to access the full data warehouse, we only need some of it. We need an access layer that allows us to get the data that we need to the users. So the data mart is a subset of the data warehouse that's, oriented on a specific business line or team. It's a slice of the data warehouse. So the benefit is we can access the data much more quickly via web browser because the data is all in one place. And we can conduct extensive analysis of the data in ways that could never have been done before. So we can actually experiment with the data. We can, see if there's particular correlations. We can identify what the causes are, what are the critical success factors in converting leads into sales. And we get this kind of consolidated view of organizational data. So we can actually see not just how many units of a product we're selling and how much it's costing, but also maybe how much that product costs to manufacture. So we actually see what the marginal revenue is, which of the products are more profitable. So, just because something has a high price doesn't mean it's profitable. It might be very expensive to sell, or it might have a lot of support issues. So we can actually understand what's actually contributing to profitability in an organization. So to recap on that part before we go on to and talk a little bit about knowledge, we have a hierarchy. So we have data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Data can actually drive the business. Data-driven decision making tends to be more effective. But we need to actually manage that data. We need to understand the sources, the challenges. We need to understand what the 4 V's are. We need to be able to provide examples of them. And then we need to understand what databases are, what the purpose of the database is, what the hierarchy of data is, what the terms in them are. So there's lots of information on that in the book. It's well worth a read. And the database management system. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about knowledge management now, and we're going to explain a little bit about what knowledge is and how organizations manage knowledge, some of the challenges. And we're going to lead in then to the material on open innovation, which changes the way in which, IT is used for knowledge management. So knowledge management is the process that helps an organization manipulate important knowledge that comprises the organization's memory. And often this knowledge is in an unstructured format. So you need to know the difference between tacit and explicit knowledge. So tacit stuff is the stuff we know, but it's not really clearly written down what it is. The explicit knowledge is clearly documented. So what knowledge is information that's contextual, relevant, and useful. So we know something about something in a particular case, and that allows us to make judgments and make predictions. It's information in action. And so we also refer to as intellectual capital, which is a bit of a buzzword. But it's really important, that difference between explicit and tacit knowledge. The explicit knowledge is what's written down. The tacit knowledge is what we know inside ourselves, our experience. So we need a knowledge management system to help us with this. So there's lots of modern information technologies that facilitate that. So we have a knowledge management cycle. We create knowledge. Then, if we have a cycle, if we actually have a knowledge management system in place, we actually capture it. So it's no point somebody making a discovery, going off and doing something in the organization, not learning from it. And we need to refine it. So it's like, we need to make it better. So if somebody makes a discovery, they discover that there's a link between, a certain behavior and a certain disease. So they need to refine and understand in what circumstances that happens. Then we need to store the knowledge, because if we don't store it, if we lose it, it's no use. We have to rediscover it all over again. And we have to manage it. We have to share it out in the organization, disseminate it, get it through to the people who need to know it. So that's really important. So one of the things that we're interested in is how organizations actually share knowledge. So we're going to talk a little bit in the next couple of ones about open innovation. I'm just going to introduce over the next couple of minutes. So, it's important to think of innovation as a process where we're looking for better solutions that meet new requirements, unarticulated needs, or existing market needs. So innovation is different to invention. Invention is when we discover something new. Innovation is when we actually make it useful. We actually deliver it to people. So people like Steve Jobs, great innovators, they're not necessarily inventors as such. They take existing things and they make them useful to people. But the problem is it's such a creative process. So how do we manage it without actually killing it? Because we've got things like creativity, hunches, experience, iterations. And if we look at the history of innovation, it started with small projects, and then it's tended to be top down. We've had, kind of the relentless innovator, the Thomas Edisons, the Leonardo da Vinci's, the people like this. But they tend to be focused on their own ideas. They're slow to adopt the ideas of others. So, there hasn't been, if we look at the war of the currents between Edison and Tesla, they didn't actually work together to think what was in the common good. They drove their own ideas. And that, results often in slowing things down because they're battling over what's the better approach rather than actually getting people to work together in the common good. So traditionally, what we had was this closed innovation system. So we had a technology innovation base, R&D within the organization, happened within the organization in a tight funnel, and it was all handled within the organization to deliver new products and services to the market. So there's a couple of assumptions behind that. We need to hire the best and brightest people. The smartest people in our industry can work for us. That's a real problem if you're in Ireland and you've got a population of 3.5 million people and you're competing with a company in India that produces a couple of 100,000 engineers every year. So you're not going to have the smartest people. The idea is we must discover things first to be first to the market, is another assumption. It's the idea is that if we do discover, we'll be first to the market. This idea is that invention and innovation are the same thing. So this is an assumption that isn't necessarily true. That's the idea is that who gets to the market first will win. And not necessarily it's the person who delivers, the technology or the tool that people most like will win. So the idea is, if we spend the most money on R&D, we'll lead the market as well. And that we must control that so nobody else can profit from our ideas. So they're the assumptions that used to underpin innovation. And the question is this still relevant? Well, what we're saying is it's not, because firms now are being advised to move to an area of open innovation. So, Chesborough, who we'll add a link to his paper up to Moodle, says, organizations innovate new ideas and bring them to market is undergoing a fundamental challenge or a paradigm shift. So we're changing. So people can work. There's no longer jobs for life. So chances are if somebody's working on an invention in one company, they'll end up working for another company within a few years. So it's impossible to actually protect your IP. So there's a huge amount of research actually takes place in universities. It's actually a public good made available to society as a whole. So, lots of money has been spent by organizations like SFI on developing research as a public good. That's available to all organizations. So, the chances of, and that's where a lot of the actual inventions occur. The internet, social media, all sorts of things have meant that information is much more widely available. Something that's important, a lot of the multinational firms are American, but what we're seeing is, that China and Asia are actually starting to pass out the United States in technology fields. So we've got deregulation, so it's harder for large organizations to monopolize industries. There's a huge increase in the amount of venture capital available. So, you've got people with lots of capital are sponsoring startup companies that are much more agile and able to innovate faster than the larger companies. So what we're going to talk about in the next section is a different approach. It's open innovation. So I'm going to leave it there, and it'll probably be tomorrow before I get to upload the next video, because I have to get home before it starts snowing again. I think there's a bit of melt out there now, so I'm going to make a break for it. But what we're going to do in the next section is we're going to talk about that open innovation and how it changes the way organizations operate.